Okay, at being just past 10:30 on March 6th, 2019, I'll call the meeting of the Monterey Bay Community Power Policy Board of Directors to order. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Policy Board Director Brown. Here. Felipe Hernandez is currently absent. He's alternate for Coppin Gomez. Dillis.
Here.
Parker. Here. Hoffa.
Here.
Oglesby is currently absent. Velasquez. Here. De La Cruz is currently absent. Freeman.
Here.
Harmon. Here. Vice Chair McShane.
Here.
And Chair McPherson.
Here. And want to welcome especially Ms. Harmon from San Luis Obispo, and first meeting sitting at around the table. Nice to have you here. We have item number 2, public comments on matters not listed on the agenda. Is there anyone on the board or in the audience who would like to address us on items that are not on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Hoffa.
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff for hearing me at our last meeting, and there's a nice bike rack down there, and it's a way of letting people know that, and businesses also, that if you have a bike rack, bikers are welcome. And I think businesses can get free bike racks from TAMC. Maybe some of you in TAMC can confirm that, but you have to install it. Anyway, thank you to the staff.
Okay, very good. Ms. Brown.
I just make an announcement that the Monterey Bay. Oh, thank you. The Monterey Bay Community Power organization was awarded a Street Smarts Award, which I accepted on behalf of the JPA on February 12th. And so the city of Santa Cruz has a public campaign to reduce traffic-related accidents and injuries. And NBC provided support for our media messaging and yard signs, among other things. You can see them on Comcast and I believe on our Facebook page as well. And thank you to those who decided to provide that support.
Yes. And,
and there it is.
And it will be framed and hung out in the front prominently. Thank you very much.
I also would like to mention that the city of Santa Cruz is they're about ready to start a bus pass system.
Oh,
is that
yeah,
right?
thank you.
That'd
Yes.
be, if you could mention that too,
Yeah.
that's great.
So the city council approved a recommendation from our downtown commission to offer bus passes, eco passes to all downtown workers in the city. So we'll be working with the Metro on making sure that workers get those passes.
And that's about 4,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a great option, and I think it's something that we should all look at in our respective jurisdictions maybe to follow. Mr. McShane.
Well, I just will say happy birthday. This marks 1 year of service for Monterey Bay Community Power, and I hope everyone's as thrilled as I am. Acknowledging the weekly, I put a little ad or an op-ed in there that I think was covered well. Also want to acknowledge the success of an EV test drive and sustainability fair that took place in Salinas in January. It was a Salinas Valley event. We had 150 drivers. It was really successful. And the same thing's coming to Seaside on the 28th as part of the Earth Day celebration. So, the more folks we can get off the road with gasoline-powered engines really, really pushes the good work of both Monterey Bay Air Resources District and Monterey Bay Community Power. So really excited about that.
Great. I'd like to mention that Mr. Oglesby from Seaside is here. It's nice to have you here. Any other matters not on the agenda that somebody would like to comment on? Okay, thank you for your input. Any corrections or additions to the agenda that anybody saw? Anybody have that? Okay, we'll move on to item number 4 through 11 is our consent agenda. Has everybody read through that? Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience that anybody would like to speak to our consent agenda? It's mainly the minutes and so forth. Entertain a motion to accept. Oh,
actually, I wanted
yes.
to pull item number 7 for just some additional comment.
Okay, we will make that, we will go down to the end at 19.1 to, assuming that you'll still be here, then you're going to be here throughout. I mean,
yes, sir.
You've got the long road to
yes.
go to San Luis. Okay, we'll pull item number 7, approve Monterey Bay Community Power's Value-Added Energy Programs Policy. It's an action item to 19.1 on the agenda. Any other, yes, Mr.
I'd like to abstain from items 4 and 5 since I wasn't at those previous meetings.
Okay, very well.
I should probably do the same as well.
Okay.
And I'll do the same.
Same, both 4 and 5?
Sorry, 5 only.
Wait.
First of all, I understand that some agencies handle this differently, but with respect to approving minutes, if you were not here for the previous minutes, you can still approve the minutes if we operate government under the assumption that the minutes are correct and properly recorded. You can approve the minutes, you can act on that motion. If you feel like you're uncomfortable acting there, you could still approve the minutes should you have reviewed the previous meeting. So those are two options available to you. If we have a number of people that are uncomfortable with either of those two options and want to abstain from voting, then we still have a quorum. We would need to make sure that we have the majority of the remaining votes being tallied to approve them. So those are our three options.
Well, then I'll vote.
You'll vote? Okay.
Sure.
I will vote as well, with that guidance. Thank you.
Okay. Be comfortable with whatever you want to do. So we have McShane and Dillis on the vote.
I'm happy to, if that's the point of clarification, that's fine.
Okay.
So I'll move the remaining items.
Same here. Okay, then, so we have a unanimous vote for accepting the consent agenda.
Move the remaining items.
Which, well, with the exception of number 7, that's going to be 19-1.
Second.
Okay, been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Okay, now we will go to item number 12, the Community Advisory Council's report. Mr. Byron?
Thank you, Chair McPherson. My name's Jeff Byron, and I'm the Community Advisory Council Chairman, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I can't believe the way you conduct your meetings. You've been through the first 11 items. I don't think the Community Council would quite get that far, but I'll slow you down a little bit.
Good.
I'd like to review.
I know you've been doing a lot of work, so go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I don't seem to run them as efficiently, certainly, as you do, sir. I am going to slow you down a little bit, though, because I have a couple of meetings to review for you, and that is starting with our January 17th meeting. This is staff report item 12. At that meeting, we conducted business on a number of topics, a number of presentations, one of which was by J.R. Killigrew, MBCP enrollment and customer rebates updates. I think you've seen all these numbers. I have to tell you that the CAC was very interested in tracking the growth around the net energy metering customers. These are incredible numbers, 10,000 NEM customers. The second item on the draft energy programs policy, this is the one I think that you've pulled from your consent agenda. We also received a presentation on this. I believe that the need for this policy was proposed by our vice chairman at a prior meeting. We think that this energy programs policy is going to provide the guidance and established criteria that's going to help inform the staff and the community to better invest and focus on the energy programs which have the maximum impact relevant to the JPA and to the goals of the MBCP. Yes. I'm going to move on to the next item unless there's any questions. We can come back, of course, to that one. The EV incentive program presentation was given by Beth Trenchett, and it was an update on the EV incentives program. And I think there's an error in the second line that I interjected by accident. You can scratch the words "and council." I think this issue's water under the bridge. I believe it's already come and gone through the operations committee. The next item down, the building code adoption. We received an update on that and supported the staff's recommendations. There was significant community support for this action. The CAC also encourages elected and administrative officials to provide leadership in adopting the EV infrastructure codes and for new and existing buildings in your communities. There is more detail around this subject that was presented to us as far back as November of last year by Ed Pike of Energy Solutions. And I believe he's still available through some alternative funding to assist interested cities and counties in implementing these code adoptions. Next item on my list is the solar installation on single family affordable housing. We supported staff recommendations based on a presentation that we were given there. And then we conducted another meeting since your last policy meeting in February on the 21st. We were very fortunate to have the staff be able to pull this one off. We had presentations from three of our county transit agencies on transportation and the potential for electrification. Now, this was really informative to the council. I know I personally learned a lot as well, because it provided a lot of background on their budgets, the funding, and the challenges going forward in their efforts to meet the stringent new California requirements on electrification of their fleets. I'm sure you've probably heard about this as well, but it was pretty informative to us and the public. This information, I think, is going to help serve the CAC on future recommendations around electrification. The next item on electrification is strategic plan scope of work. We also supported this work, this $150,000 contract. The CAC sees this plan as an essential element in determining and funding future electrification projects. So we were very supportive of this. And a few more. The council members supported the staff's recommendation to seek the Operation Board of Directors approval on the Microgrid Smart Connect program as an alternate to the Go Local program. You may recall that Go Local was pulled because of a lack of funding. And so we support this program. This could grow rather large, depending upon the interest that there are in the county, in the various businesses in the county. And I want to highlight a number of notable observations and recommendations that were made by some of the members of the advisory council in my report for your consideration, really for the operations board consideration. And that is, one, the program should be characterized as a pilot so as to contain community expectations and limit projects to a manageable number. The second would be the proposal selection criteria should be developed that would maximize the goals of this agency, namely greenhouse gas reduction. And three, a minimum renewable energy requirement should be considered or encouraged for program projects to also reflect the MBCP goals. I'll finish with we also had a little more Brown Act training. I think council wants to make sure that we all stay within the lines when we have a public workshop on March 30th. That'll be from 9 to 12:30 a.m. at the Watsonville Civic Hall. And of course, that's open to any and everyone. And if any of you would like to attend, we would certainly welcome you and make note of your presence there. I think I'll end by saying we're going to cancel the March, because of the March 30th workshop, we're going to cancel our March 21 regular business meeting. So our next business meeting will be April 18th. And a personal comment, I was talking to Chair McPherson just before our meeting began, and I just want to note that how much I support the structure of this organization. Although it may be very challenging for the CEO and the staff to support 3 boards, it really provides a great deal of opportunity for community participation and transparency, which I have to say, having worked in this electric power industry my entire career, is sorely missing until the creation of these community choice aggregation organizations. That concludes my report, and unless you have any questions, that's it for me.
I just want to say thank you and to each of your council members. We have a new structure, probably different from maybe there's some others that are following our model, but it's, I want to thank you, and I think the staff hasn't complained, at least to me, and I think I think everybody's energized, excuse the pun, by what you're doing, and it does get the community to be more of a participant in what we're doing, and it's transparent, and we really appreciate your input. I'd like to, I think might be, well, we probably wrote down some notes, but just to have if we could each have the board members have a printout of just the list of the general subjects he has, so we can be reminded of what you've been doing. And if you think there's something that should be added there, Mr. Byron, let us know, but I think it's all there.
Again, the wonderful staff put that slide together, so I'm seeing it for the first time. But I think that's everything that was in my report.
Okay. It'd be great if we could get a copy of that to each of the policy board members, just to remind us and what you've been doing and what you presented to us today. Any other board members have any questions? Any questions from the audience? Thank you very much again for your presentation. That didn't take very much. Oh, did you have a comment? Excuse me.
Thank you. Yeah, and I believe that Jeff's report is in your board packets in its entirety.
It is. I don't think is that in here too? I didn't get it.
I think I saw it in the agenda packet.
Yeah, the bullet point. I was just thinking the bullet points that maybe
Okay.
some would appreciate that. I don't know.
So I just wanted to follow up on some of Jeff's comments about our discussions at the Community Action Council on the microgrid proposal, which I think our committee was very enthusiastic about. I wanted to echo some of the comments that Jeff made about wanting to see this renewables really be prioritized in this project. It's a potential revenue stream for the organization, which is a positive thing, whereas the Go Local program would have required a lot of subsidy. Besides renewables, I think it would be great if the staff can find a way to prioritize putting in as large a battery as possible. And, with these pilot projects, I'm sure that, we're going to learn a lot, and every project's going to be different, but just want to emphasize the mission and how we develop this new program. Also, combustion power is going to probably be required on all of these microgrids, and it's going to be a trade-off between combustion power and battery size, and it might be an opportunity to put some subsidy in and get bigger batteries in that have actually more value during the microgrid phase. And then when these islanded microgrids get connected to the grid, the renewable and the battery becomes an asset for Monterey Bay Community Power on the grid. In the use of combustion power, it would be great to see.
I know you're on CAG. Could you just introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm Seth Capron. I'm sorry, I'm a member of the Community Action Community Advisory Council. In terms of combustion power, it would be great to see a priority given to using equipment that could use biogas, and then using biogas wherever it's feasible. And probably in the future, there'll be more availability of that. But like I said, we're very enthusiastic about this program. I think it's a creative solution to get our local economic development and local deployment of renewable power in a way that actually is an economic plus for the organization. So really applaud the staff for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Now, any other questions from board members? Yes, Ms. Parker.
Thank you. I just want to comment that, it took some doing for us to put together this advisory council, and I'm just really pleased to see the depth of conversation that is being conducted and the vetting of these issues, and really being able to bring recommendations forward that are really reflect such a thoughtful discussion on the part of staff, the council, and other advisors that they are able to bring in to inform them and basically inform us. But just wanted to express my appreciation for all the work that's going on there at the Community Advisory Council, and to staff for really supporting those efforts, because the quality of the comments that we heard and the reports that we're getting from the council are just, I think that's kind of what we wanted to see, and it's so much more helpful for the public who's interested in this to be able to participate in the conversation rather than just having 3 minutes to try to get our attention about something. So again, just my appreciation all around.
Well said. Yes, thank you.
Since we still have the process of choosing our community voice on this council, are there voices that you're not hearing from? Are there underrepresented groups that aren't at the table that would be helpful for me to keep in mind as we go through that selection process?
I don't know if Mr. Byron can answer that.
I would say, no, we've got a really good cross-section. I refer you to the process that was before we were selected that was undertaken by this organization. They reviewed, I believe it was 62 different applications, and I can tell you, I feel very comfortable we have a diverse cross-section.
Yeah. Yes, Mr.
You know, if I
McShane.
could add, if you're open to suggestions, a college student. I mean, we got a lot of colleges and universities in the region, or I don't know if mom or dad would let them, but even, you know, a high schooler.
And
You know,
Cal,
I'd have a
Cal
student
Poly's an
voice.
excellent engineering school too, so it's a
Love that.
college,
Yeah, that's the
university.
kind of information I was curious about. So sometimes we have an idea of what we're saying when we're saying underrepresented, but that's great.
Cool.
I think especially with all the energy around young people and climate
No
action.
pun intended.
Really cool.
Yeah, here we
Super
go
cool.
again.
From one Cal Poly grad to another, right? All right.
3. Thank
Oh,
you.
all right.
Yeah. Any other questions? Again, thank you again, and please pass those shining words on to your colleagues on the council. Item number 13, the Operations Board report. The Chair, Renee Mendez, could not make it today. Mr. Habashi, would you like to give a report on that? Or is there anyone else that was prepared to do so? I think you were the one, so.
Yeah, happy to.
What-
Chair Mendez asked me to give the report on behalf of the Operations Board. It's going to be a really short one. And they had 2 meetings before this one in January and February. The meeting in January focused entirely on receiving a report on the enrollment of customers into MBCP, and also on the rebates that each of the cities have gotten. You're going to receive very similar report today. And in February, there was one presentation from the auditor. Pretty much everything seems to be done correctly, at least our audit for the first year that started October 1st of 2017, ended September of 2018. The audit came out looking pretty good, and so we passed our first test, so to speak. Then right after that audit report, the lights went out, and we had to pretty much call the meeting off. It came back about half an hour later, but by then everybody was gone. So that's the report from the Operations Board, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions from board members? Any questions from the audience? Okay, we'll move on to item number 14, the CEO's report.
We start, as we like to start, with an update on the staffing, and we got 2 new members that joined us in the last couple of months. Alexis Garcia, and he's right behind me. Alexis, he started with us as an intern, and after a few months, we just obviously JR recognized the value that he got, and he said he wanted to bring him in on a full-time basis. Right now, he's actually on a part-time basis while he finishes his last course, and as soon as he does, we'll bring him in on a full-time basis. Great asset, and we're pretty happy to have him. Also, we got Sage, and I believe she's back here as well. Sage Lang, she's joined us as working on a program. She's a program coordinator working with Beth Trencard, who I think probably still back there. And the 2 of them have been working very hard on putting together the programs that we are going to start launching in the spring. Pretty glad to have both of them here, and we're still short about, I would say, maybe another 6 or 7 people to get us to the full count of 25. Right now, I think we're about 18. But we're getting there. I think we're probably going to be, we made 1 offer. We're going to be making a couple of offers pretty soon. And hopefully by summer, we'll be fully staffed. Second update I want to make is on PG&E's filing for Chapter 11. The last time we got together was back in December. and before a lot of stuff happened that you're well aware of. But I'm just going to take a, starting December and go forward. In December 21st, the CPUC, in an attempt to try to kind of halt PG&E from filing Chapter 11, started a proceeding. Basically, they said we want to look at PG&E's safety record, and we're going to examine everything that need to be done in order to improve on that record. And and it was anywhere between as little as maybe a couple of directors need to go and be replaced, or maybe a top manager or something. And as much as let's just take the entire organization and dismantle it completely and break it into smaller pieces, or even turn it into a municipal organization or a number of municipal organizations, and anything in between. They wanted to examine just about everything that you can think of in order to have PG&E improve on their safety. That happened on December 21st, somewhere around January, I believe, January 14th. PG&E sent the smoke signals that they plan to file for Chapter 11, and indeed on January 29th they did file for Chapter 11. For us, obviously, when we got the smoke signal, we start thinking, how is that going to impact us? And there were two obvious issues that we needed to that we were concerned about. One, PG&E collects revenues now. They build a customer, they meter, they build a customer, and then our share of the revenue they move to our bank on a daily basis. And that's been going on since we launched. That was the biggest issue that was concerning us. Are they going to stop? Because when you file for Chapter 11, all outgoing payments stop until you get some ruling from the bankruptcy judge that says, yes, you can release this money to those folks, and no, you can't release this money to the other folks. So we early on started to talk to PG&E and to others who were going to be involved in the bankruptcy, just to be assured that that money is going to move into our bank account on a daily basis, uninterrupted. And on January 2019, obviously, when they filed, one of the motions that they put in place was, yes, we're going to continue to move the money to the CCAs, along with a number of other motions that they filed on day one. 2 days later, the judge ruled on all the motions and agreed that our money is going to move forward uninterrupted. And 3 days after that, the money started to move back. They stopped for about 5 days, but after that, they started all the money that they owed us. They moved it back, and it has been now since that time. We have uninterrupted movement of money coming from PG&E. The ruling of the judge will become final, I believe, on March 13th, if I remember correctly. Rob, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that's right. I think the date for oppositions will be March 8th, and the ruling the following Thursday.
Okay, so we quite certain that we're not going to have an issue, but still the ruling is not final, so there could be opposition, or let us come and say, no, you shouldn't be doing that, and then the judge will have to rule on that when the time comes. The second issue that concerned us had to do with a number of contracts that we have with Pacific Gas and Electric. Those are contracts, pretty much one-way contracts. We are buying from PG&E, mostly attributes, renewable portfolio standards attributes, as well as carbon-free credits, and resource adequacy, capacity. All these contracts over the next 3 years amount to about $40 million. Now the concern that we have, they have not yet, PG&E that is, they have not announced whether they're going to assume or reject any of the contracts that they have. They have hundreds of contracts, either with suppliers where they're receiving power and paying money, or from contracts with folks like us where they actually delivering products and receiving money for it. They have not tipped their hand one way or the other. So the concern is that if they reject the contracts that we have with them at one point or another, then whatever products that we buy from them, we have to go to the market and buy it. And if they reject our contracts, they probably are going to reject other CCA contracts at the same time. So it's going to create a bit of a competition and run on the market to try to kind of displace whatever that is that we bought from them. If that were to happen, we're probably going to have to pay a little bit more to get these products. Now, this is the negative side. The positive side, which I think overwhelms the negative side, is the only reason that they would reject those contracts if they don't have these products to begin with. And for that to happen, they really need to reject all the contracts that they have now with suppliers that are grossly above market. Right now, they have lots of contracts with solar providers with the price that they pay to those contractors somewhere between 3 to 10 times as much as market price today for solar power, for example. So if they end up rejecting those contracts, then they don't have the attributes to sell us anymore. So they have to reject our contracts by necessity, not by choice. I don't see that to be a high probability. I think I would probably is less than 10% that they will reject our contracts. Most likely they will find the most expensive contracts that they have now with their contractors and try to renegotiate that and use the potential, the fund of Chapter 11 as the leverage, as in if you don't renegotiate these contracts with us, we'll go and reject them. And so that may force the contractors to work with them on trying to renegotiate these contracts. Either way, I see us as either in the same place or probably better. That's my assessment of that second issue. So the first issue is fine. Second issue is we're going to be in the same spot or better. And that's the quick report on what's going on with PG&E. This process is going to take another somewhere between 24 to 30 months at a minimum. So take a deep breath. It's going to take a while before we actually see the end of it. And that's fine, and it's certainly not impacting us.
Got a question from Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. As you're talking about PG&E needing to renegotiate some of these higher-priced contracts, would that ultimately have an impact on the PCIA, lowering that in the future?
Exactly. I mean, that's the positive side. If they end up rejecting or renegotiating some of these contracts, that reduces their cost of supply and power, and that reduces the PCIA that we have to pay.
Thank you.
Next is a quick report on what we are doing with microgrids. As you probably know, that we have a number of folks coming to us, customers or actually city managers, saying we are trying to get connection. We're trying to get connection to the grid, and PG&E has given us a long time, for a long lead time, as well as they want a lot of upfront money to do so. These areas that folks want to develop are out more in rural counties, in the rural Monterey County, and they come to us saying, "Can you help? Can you figure out a way to help us?" And it's happening more often than not. So we are putting together now a process, an application process that we can put out there to those folks and say, okay, if you do need help, fill this application. We want to look at one, what you are trying to do, two, whether you actually have the money to do it or not, three, whether you'll be willing to upfront some of the money that we have to spend on building the necessary supply to meet your needs. Until we get that, we really don't have a good idea about what geographical location we're talking about. We don't know what kind of footprint we have available in order to put anything, whether it be generation or just wires and cables to connect to the different facilities. We are, at this point, don't know what these microgrids are going to look like, or what they're going to be serving, what's the size of capacity that's needed. All that's still unknown. So once we get that application process in place and we begin to see some demand, then we'll be able to sift through it and decide on how we're going to serve that need. And you've heard already a couple of comments basically saying that we need to put as many if we can help it, as many renewable resources in there if we have the footprint to support it, especially batteries. And also there may be a need for combustion turbines because most of these folks are asking for 24 hours operation, and right now you can't get that with solar only or with wind only. With the intent, at least as far as I'm concerned, is that we put these resources or generating resources and serve the customer until the time that we are able to connect to the grid. And once we connect to the grid, then whatever facilities that we put in there will be on standby. If it's batteries, then we actually can use it. It just becomes another part of our portfolio of assets. If it's a combustion turbine, then we just idle it and have it be on standby so we can get all of our resources from the grid that will be 100% carbon free. So that's where we are. We obviously don't have anything to report because we don't have a specific interest that came in. We will be putting the application together during March, and probably April we'll be out there talking to folks who now want to give some serious thought about starting whatever business that they want to start, and will tell us all the information that we need in order to start the process in earnest. With that, I'm ready to report on the next, if no questions about the microgrids.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Velasquez.
What is the projected cost for the infrastructure to build a microgrid system?
In absolute terms, it's difficult to tell because I don't know what's going to be required. Is it 2 megawatt system that they need or 10 megawatt system that they need? Obviously, the larger the installation that they have, the larger the need, and obviously the larger system we have to have in place. On a per unit basis, I would say it will probably be in the 9 cents a kilowatt hour, and that just to pay for the generation and the connections to those facilities, whatever those facilities are at the time. And that's why we couldn't really do that if we are connecting to the grid immediately, because 9 cents is considerably higher than what we pay today for wholesale power. The only reason we can do it is because we'll be able to take the money that they would have paid for the transmission and distribution to PG&E, able to take that as well and help to pay for whatever the generating facilities that we're going to put in place.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Hoffa.
Yes.
So I'm just, the tail end of that was kind of intriguing to me. So what you're saying is if we have some kind of a microgrid system, then we're able to not only recover the costs associated with the energy purchase, but also the delivery. Do you anticipate, how would this affect the customers in that area? And will our application essentially have kind of a cost recovery analysis so that hopefully we come out at least net neutral as an agency?
That's the idea. That is exactly the idea, and that's why we can afford to do it now, because there is no transmission distribution charge that's coming from PG&E because it's an island, basically, when we start. And may take about 5 years for us to be able to connect to the grid, and during that time we have recovered as much as we possibly can in order to pay for the assets that we put in.
Good question. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? You have still more in your report, I know.
Yes. The power supply rates, PG&E surprised us with a small adjustment that they are making to the generation rates. Overall, it has an increase of 2% to it. They're making it applicable on March 1st because of certain processes that we have to go through. We will be able to make that change. It's a small tweak. It's not the big one. The big one's still yet to come. But it's a small tweak that we're going to make it effective April 1st for us. It will drive some of the rates down slightly, and will drive some of the rates up. But the overall looks like it's going to be an impact of an increase of about $1.5 to 2%. The larger adjustment is when they recalculate or figure out what the final numbers for the PCIA will be, as well as the larger adjustment that they're going to make to the generation rates. And that was supposed to be in place January 1st. They kept postponing it. It became March 1st, and now they are talking about at the earliest it will be May 1st before we see the big adjustment for 2019 come into play. My guess is probably June will be more like it, maybe even July, when they make the larger adjustment, and that's when both the PCIA as well as the generation rates will be adjusted. And it will be good only for, I guess, 6 to 7 months, because comes January of 2020, there is another yet new adjustment that will be coming in for the power rates. The power supply RFO, we have actually 2 of them now. We are doing one for a smaller system to see if we can bring in a contract that will be about 10-year contract for renewable resources or carbon-free resources. That's going to be we still don't know what the quantity will be because we're still receiving offers. There's a second one that we are working on with the city of, with the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, similar to what we've done with them already 3 times with wind and solar plus storage. All what we're trying to do at this point, because the new law SB 100, have changed the amount that we need to have of carbon-free as well as renewables, moved it a little up front. So now we need to have a larger quantity of our demand, total demand, be met by renewable resources, and we need to do that sooner. Initially, when we engaged in the 3 contracts that we're in, we needed about 22% of all of our total demand to be met by long-term contracts, renewable contracts. And now we actually have to up that to about 30% by the year 2023. So we need to have a couple of more contracts in place that will take care of, to cover that additional 10% of total demand that we need to have in place. So we will be in negotiations probably for the next few months, and we'll bring these contracts to you folks most likely around the summertime. And last is just a report, and you have that. I think that report is attached to your packet. This is our reply to their OII, the one that I've spoke about earlier. This is the order instituting investigation that they've ordered on December 21st to look at PG&E's safety record and how to fix it up. We filed a report basically saying that you need to get PG&E out of the generation business. You need to have them spend a little bit more money on undergrounding, which, by the way, we're the only ones that kind of suggested that out of all the 22 comments that went to the CPUC. I think we're the only ones that said, here's a safety tip for you. You put some of these wires underground. Maybe you don't have to worry about branches hitting them and causing fires and causing all sorts of problems. And there were CalCCA put their comments, and another 20 different entities and agencies made their own comments as well. Of all of that, CPUC is going to move forward, I'm sure, with a few of these ideas and see if they can further any of them to help PG&E take care of their safety record. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my report to you.
Okay. Any questions from the board members? Maybe this would be a good time for me. I got a letter from a Scotts Valley school district board member about how we were prioritizing expanding our carbon-free efforts to really address school districts and some public agencies, school buses and so forth. I think we're on track to do that, but I don't know if we have to answer every letter, but I think it'd be worthy of some just a quick response to that.
Sure. I think if I remember correctly, the letter was suggesting that perhaps helping put solar panels on pedestals and parking lots in schools as one way to fund programs. We've looked at that along with a number of other options that we had, and we have focused on really transportation and building electrification as the top two, where we're going to get probably the best bang for the buck, so to speak. And the bang here being reduction of greenhouse gas or reduction of emissions. That seems to be what we find to be the most effective way is to go after transportation and building electrification. And most specifically for schools, we got to work on actually we do have a program in the works to help the schools replace their school buses with the electric buses, so the kids don't have to smell the diesel every time they go back and forth from schools. Not only that, but they at a young age they get accustomed and learn about electric buses, and hopefully by the time they're ready to drive a car, that's the only thing that they can think of is driving an electric car. So that program is in the works. I tell JR and Beth almost like once every 2 days now to get it going, and he usually have the same look on his face every time I do, because he's doing a lot of other work at the same time. But it's definitely a very worthy program that we need to start.
Building on that, just recently we had a remarkable presentation at the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments meeting. Some of us, I think you were there, John, the success of Energy Watch, which is a program of AMBAG in our school districts. I think they've touched every school district in the Tri-County area, which is our service area. So connecting with them using existing conduits and or partnering. There's these other agencies that have similar missions and ideas, and co-branding and endorsing, and just everybody working together, I think is beneficial. So before we launch and before we say, hey, this is what we're going to do, be sure to call on some of them and say, hey, would you endorse this? Can we say in collaboration with, this sort of a spirit, I think could lend itself to some real success.
Yeah, just to note that we spent a couple of hours yesterday between 3 and 5, maybe a little after 5, with the folks over at AMBAD saying and doing exactly what you you suggested.
Yeah, most of the people sitting around this table are members of AMBAG, so that's a good thing. I think it's really a good point, because when we get a cooperative effort, this is the first, by the way, Tri-County, now Quad County effort, but in 45 years, AMBAG was the last, or the previous one, the last one, before this was formed. But if we can work with them, I'm sure in a cooperative effort, we can save some funding for everyone and get our thoughts together. Mr. Freeman?
Well, I was just going to add to what Steve said. I believe there's a new program that they are administrating where if they go in and redo your lighting system, put in computerized lighting controls, new LED bulbs and stuff, that they actually take the cost of those off of your PG&E bill, or it's somehow worked in there, so there's literally no cost. And they want to make every jurisdiction in the Tri-County area take advantage of this program. So that's just a little extra.
I do want to add, just so be clear, that the PG&E today collects money from everybody. It's called Public Benefit Fund, and a portion of that money goes to energy efficiency programs. They allocate it to energy efficiency programs, and they give that money to a number of agencies, including AMBAG, so they can do exactly what you suggested, John. And what we're trying to do is build complementing programs that will focus more on increasing the supply or fuel switching and doing other things that would be also helpful for the customer and good for the environment.
Did you want to expand on anything with the legislative? In other words, a legislative report? Is there anything?
My apologies. I do actually have our legislative
Pete Montgomery.
Right here, he's our lobbyist up in Sacramento,
And I saw in your note that 2,700 pieces of legislation were introduced by the legislature. We've got a lot of problems in the state of California. I guess we have 2,700 of them. But Pete, go ahead.
We have a lot, yeah. Thanks, Chair McPherson, my former boss. So as Bruce just said, we just finished the bill introduction deadline with over 2,700 bills being introduced. At this point, we're tracking about 50 bills that could be of impact to Monterey Bay Community Power or energy policy in general. So some could be on wildfire liability that could impact CCA. Some could be on a whole host of different topics that we're tracking. There was a partial list, I think, provided in the board packet. Some of those are going to drop off as they get amended. Some will be added to it. As those of you know, all of you in local government probably impact with Sacramento quite a bit. At the beginning of the session, there's a lot of what they call spot bills, so bills that have no substance in them that will become either vehicles for something different or get expanded greatly. Never probably before since maybe 2000 with the energy crisis, in this topic area has there been so much uncertainty and potentially opportunity. The policy discussions dominating Sacramento on energy are all about what does energy policy and service look like in a post-PG&E bankruptcy world, and we're in the very early stages of that. Right now, Governor Newsom has a strike team. They're mostly focused on wildfire liability and what to do, kind of looking forward on preventing wildfires, but also looking at what do the utilities look like post-bankruptcy. There's a 14-member working group in the Senate which is discussing this issue. Both houses of the legislature this week are holding informational hearings on what does the structure of energy service look like going forward. Good news on that is CalCCA has a panelist in both of those informational hearings, and that's something that's new. They're small hearings. You have the president of the PUC, you have the utilities, maybe somebody from the ISO, and you have CalCCA. So definitely recognized as a player in this discussion. As folks try to figure this out, most of the legislation in terms of details is on hold, where folks might have had a pretty aggressive agenda on certain issues like electric vehicles, energy storage. Things are kind of on pause. With PG&E's bankruptcy proceeding, and as Tom said, with the comments in the OII about breaking up PG&E or separating gas and electricity, taking away generation capacity, and Sempra additionally signaling that they want to be out of the generation business. There's a lot of questions that are on the table that will be part of the discussions in Sacramento. What are the futures of the IUUs? Just transmission and delivery, split PG&E? And in that question, what is the role of CCAs? And if CCAs take over some of that role in terms of energy delivery and procurement, who's the central buyer or who procures energy on behalf of those customers not represented by either a CCA or a POU? Should that be state-run? Does Edison get to buy power for everybody? And then another one, which Tom mentioned, what about the legacy IOU renewable contracts? So that's one of the big discussions going on in Sacramento. So the big developers right now are in the governor's office or in the legislature saying, we signed and financed 30-year PPAs, and those are got the attention of Wall Street, that those contracts may be renegotiated. So those questions are all up in the air. A lot of those will get put into legislation. If you look at the bills, they have subject areas about procurement, central buyers. Those are all placeholders for what will ultimately be where they try and resolve this. For Monterey Bay, we're very fortunate to have a strong and supportive and very engaged legislative delegation. And fortunately, with the addition of San Luis Obispo, it's getting bigger, which is great. The more friends we have in Sacramento, the better. And we'll be working very closely with them to make sure that our interests are represented. And recently, Tom and Bruce and I did a round with our delegation, mostly to talk about the impacts of PG&E bankruptcy on Monterey Bay. So, folks have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Hoffman.
First of all, thank you for your work on behalf of the agency. I do want to suggest, I think there are folks on the policy board who also have relationships with legislators throughout the Quad area, and probably our community action council members also. So it would be great if we could get action alerts when there are really key votes coming up on important bills to the agency, and we
Absolutely.
may be able to help.
The great success that CCAs have had in Sacramento are due to the local leaders engaging with their state representatives. Absolutely. When we have legislation that's important, turning the folks on who have those relationships locally is really important.
Good point. Ms. Brown, did you have a question, or anybody else on the board? Okay, thank you, Pete. Mr. Montgomery? Yeah, right. Okay, and that concludes your report then, Mr.
Yes.
Bashi?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr.
All right. Let's see, was there any questions from the audience? Yes.
Kevin Dayton, representing Clear Honest Options and Clean Energy, which attempts to monitor and advocate for business and taxpayer groups in Monterey County. I wanted to bring up three things here, since this is getting into the area of vision for the agency. And first, I wouldn't go to the state legislature looking for vision and opportunity. I would go to Monterey Bay Community Power to look for vision and opportunity, because you're a much better place to do it than what goes on up there in Sacramento. It's crazy and very difficult to get anything done. Three things that you might want to look at. First, the matter of undergrounding. With the PG&E troubles, you may have some opportunity to influence locally how transmission lines are put underground. Obviously a very expensive proposition, but I think something that the public is actually open to paying for. I think there would be a lot more interest in paying, borrowing money for undergrounding transmission lines than there is at this point for the high-speed rail program. I think you would actually win a vote if you did this. I heard this morning that a big project is going to be soon putting transmission lines up, and I was thinking, I wonder if there was any talk about putting those underground. There's a couple good things for undergrounding transmission lines, not only the health and safety issues, but also aesthetics. I would love to be driving around in 20, 30 years and seeing the beautiful hills, and even if they have to have the little paths there to give access, it'd be great if those wires were gone. This is long-term vision that you can change the future of California and the people living here by doing that. So what I would do is, anybody who's proposing transmission lines within your territory, ask them what their plan is for undergrounding and see if you can get them to do it. Secondly, microgrids, I'll quickly mention that. It's always a thought of mine that one of the biggest vulnerabilities for the United States in terms of security is the public power agencies and the public water agencies. I'm just very distrustful too of having a big government entity controlling everything, or private investor-owned entities for that matter. Please try to do the microgrids as much as you can. I like what Berkeley is doing with microgrids. I heard about I think it was a Stockton Police Department. They had emergency power generators, and then when the power went back on, it completely went off and it went backwards. Microgrids are the answer to solving some of these problems that I think are vulnerable. Then I wanted to bring up real big visions. People ask me, well, if PG&E was bankrupt and you were in control of Monterey Bay Community Power, what would you do? And I would say I would try to get control of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant and control it for public use. And I know this would be a massive undertaking. San Luis Obispo, could you imagine if this agency was somehow able to negotiate with PG&E to get all the assets and liabilities of that spot? By the way, I don't know if you've ever been there. It's beautiful land. You could actually shut that down. I know Santa Monica is trying to do that right now. Lots of opportunities. So if I were you, I'd say, what can we do about Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant? This could be our territory. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that seems like an easy task, but also in Santa Cruz County, I know we have a one dig policy to try to get the various utilities or agencies together if they have a gas line, phone line, power line. Once you're going to have a project of any magnitude, that everybody gets to know about it, so they could put their lines underground. So there's some movement to do that. I don't know how many agencies have done it, but some have. So it's a good point. Thank you. Yes, sir. Would you please introduce
Dave
yourself?
Lessicar, resident of Seaside. First, I have a question regarding the PG&E rate adjustment due for this year. I know late last year the talk was that PG&E was expecting to have a 12% rate reduction. So is that something like that still in the works?
Yes, I believe so. But based on their calculations, which we are not privy to their numbers. They usually don't reveal them to us. They reveal them to the CPUC, and the latest set of numbers that they reveal to CPUC is that they need to make a small adjustment upwards to the generation rates of what amounted to about 2% on the average, with the understanding that we are likely to have a subsequent reduction in the generation rates comes in June or July.
Okay. And the other thing that seems to be the future of driving the adoption of electric vehicles is that I have a few examples. Over the last couple of years, a couple of police departments, one in England, one right here in Fremont, are trying out Tesla vehicles. In England, a Model X, in Fremont, a Model S, and they're with the expectation that given the lower depreciation, that basically that the electric vehicle is going to work out to be less expensive to own and operate over longer periods of time due to less depreciation, less maintenance costs, and lower fuel costs. And a very specific example is Edmunds does 5-year cost of ownership for all vehicles that have a few years of track record. So comparing the 2016 Model S versus the comparable BMW 7 Series, the 5-year cost of operation of the Model S is $20,000 less than the BMW. And people have extrapolated Edmunds' work a bit and made a few reasonable assumptions and come up with an estimate that the Model 3 is similarly going to be cheaper to own and operate over a 5-year period than comparably priced competitors.
Thank you. Any comments from the board on any of those presentations? Okay, we will move on to item number 15, appointments of the 2019 chair and vice chair. Mr. Freeman?
Yes, I was tasked with just getting together the various things and people who wanted to run for chair and vice chair of this group. And the two names that came up was Bruce McPherson and Steve McShane, so I'd like to put them both into consideration for chair and vice chair of this group.
Okay. Ms. Brown?
Second.
Any other?
Did you move? Was that a motion? Yes.
Sure, make it a motion. Make it a motion.
Wasn't sure.
Any other proposals for members to be chair or vice chair? Well, I thank you for that. I'll close the nominations, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, excuse me, public comment on that? Is there any public comment on the proposal for chair and vice chair? Okay, now we'll go for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So ordered. I don't know if that's a vote of confidence or just nobody else wants to do this, but whatever. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this, and I appreciate the input from every board member and the policy board and as we talked about, the council. It really has been a really participatory agency, and if you have any questions, you know how to direct them, not to me, but to Mr. Hibashi. But I do appreciate everything that everybody has done. This has been the greatest team effort I've ever been associated with in government, and it's really nice to see it. We're rolling along, even with some some blips like the PG&E bankruptcy and all that, but I'm looking forward to bigger and better things as we get bigger and better. So thank you very much. Now we have item number 16 to reappoint Community Advisory Council members Richard Stedman, Amelia Bezawist, Alan Bueno de Bosque, each to a 3-year term. Is there any board member that would like to comment on that? Anybody from the audience would like to comment on? Mr. Byron.
Well, I feel like I should, just as the chairman of that committee. These have been excellent members. I only found out about the reappointment of them when I read the board package that you all have today. I don't even know if they've been approached, but I would certainly hope that you would reappoint them, and I would hope they would continue. They really bring, the three of these members bring a great deal of diversity and input to this advisory council.
Good.
I just want to be clear that we did call each and every one of them, and all three of them said yes, they would like to be reappointed.
Good. Thank you. Okay.
Move the appointments.
We got a motion from Ms. Parker. Second from McShane. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So ordered. We will go to receive an update on Monterey Bay Community Power outreach and engagement. Mr. Richardson.
This is JR is going to be presented this item. JR Killigrew.
Okay. I know a J.R. Richardson too. My God, that was Killigrew. Excuse me. Yeah, right.
Good morning,
Mr.
everyone. Thank you, Mr. Abachi, and thank you, Board Chair. I wanted to at least start this off with a little animation that it is our 1-year anniversary, so we should all give ourselves a big pat on the back.
Right.
I did want to highlight a few things before we jump in. In technically 12 months of service, delivered carbon-free electricity. We're debt-free. We're building reserves. We've done well over 150 events so far, $4.4 million in customer savings. We're launching an innovative suite of programs. We launched our Great Community Advisory Council, and we inked contracts for 3 renewable energy projects that are going to amount for 20% of our current demand. That's in the first year. And we're extending our family down to San Luis Obispo and Morro Bay. So I think just kudos to everybody in this room for the leadership to get this Tri-County program going and make it bigger and better than everything, especially under the guidance of Tom. Enrollment stats, based on the policy board meeting back in December, there was a request that we come forth to you every quarter and give you an enrollment engagement update. We will continue to refine and make this as robust and succinct as possible. But we are coming to the end of our enrollment. We've actually got one more batch of NEM customers next month, about 5,000. So our family of customers will probably come in about 277,000 after the end of April. And we're holding strong at a little over 97% account enrollment and a little over 96% of the demand. So of the eligible kilowatt hours that were enrolled, we kept about 96% of that. I do want to provide a snapshot of each of our 19 individual communities. This is the enrollment by accounts. The purple designates all the great communities in Monterey County. The tealish is the great communities in San Benito. And then the navy blue is the great communities in Santa Cruz County. And then overall, you see we're at about 97.3%. Again, you're probably wondering, San Benito is a more rural community. There's a lot of misinformation going on social media. So we're reactivating a new kind of outreach approach just to provide people with information to make the best decision for their home or business. Did also want to break down the customer segments. We track this by residential customers, commercial customers. That spans the gamut of the ag and some ag customers, public agencies, schools, you name it. That's kind of the umbrella designation. We have agricultural customers, but we're also going to communicate about care and fair customers. So our low-income customers, 35% of our residential customers are care and fair. That is a tremendous amount of kind of folks who kind of work paycheck to paycheck to live in this area. So it's something that we want to keep a keen outlook on and make sure we're hopefully developing programs and providing savings to them. Again, medical baseline, the folks who need kind of on-demand medical equipment at their house, as well as net energy metering customers. And we're actually a little surprised and shocked that the NEM customers have the highest enrollment out of all of our customer base. Additionally, we have another great service offering called MB Prime that supports 100% renewable energy. We've seen a nice recent uptick, about 248 enrollments. But for our rebate options, again, all customers get their 3% rebate, or they can divert it towards MB Share, which reinvests in programs through the community foundations, or MB Green Plus, which is about reinvesting in local programs. So we're actually pleasantly surprised to see more folks were investing their rebate in MB Green Plus and MB Share. Customer feedback, we're tracking why people are opting out. And just wanted to give you a quick snapshot that, again, the majority of the updates are coming from Monterey County. A lot of that has come from some of the misinformation campaigns on Nextdoor and some other social media platforms. But then also the reasons why. Again, the automatic enrollment is still the biggest hurdle for us to get over. So we're going to continue to refine our message and continue to make sure that people see the value of this program and this agency moving forward. In terms of messaging, we are hopefully going to be spreading our wings a little better and becoming that trusted, vital public agency that, AMBAG is or MBARD is and all that stuff. We definitely want to look up to our longstanding partners here and work with them and have a lot of cohesion there. So we definitely just want to move into building trust this year and moving forward. We do want to figure out ways to differentiate ourselves from the IOUs. What's our value of us being a not-for-profit public agency that's reinvesting as opposed to a for-profit corporate entity that's beholden to their board? A lot of other really interesting messaging that's going to go out, taking a lot of lessons learned from our enrollment this year and apply that to the city of San Luis Obispo and Morro Bay. We hopefully see this next enrollment as our coming out party of taking all the lessons learned, make sure we get out and do as many events, we get out in front of a lot of the issues that we've seen in this enrollment to make this one as successful. Outreach efforts. We are doing a lot, and I just wanted to highlight we've already booked 30 events this year just to date, and we've got another 40 or 50 that are on our books for opportunities. We're always welcome to hear from each one of our boards, whether it's policy, operations, or our community advisory council about where we should be at. The most important thing I want to touch upon is engagement with underserved communities. We have a great partnership with Univision doing the agricultural outreach. Every 2 weeks, we go to different farms around our service area. We provide lunch. We provide networking opportunities to reach the underserved customers that may not know about us. We actually got a big win. Guess who's going to be partnering with us on this? The Monterey Bay Aquarium. They are now going to be attending with us on a monthly basis for this agricultural outreach. Wow. Additionally, for our work with the underserved communities, I'd like to give a shout out to to Mark Adato as well as Alexis. They've been working with the County Immigration Services Network of Empowerment as well as SCORE to work with the underserved communities about energy education and make sure that their voice is heard at our table. And also I'd like to give a nod to the Watsonville Law Center. We've been partnering them with a little bit to help mitigate misinformation about these third-party providers that are knocking on doors and creating a whole bunch of confusion. So it's great to have the city of Watsonville and that law center there to partner with us. Marketing efforts. One thing I will let you know, our website is being redone. Hopefully by the beginning part of April or middle part of April, we're going to have a brand new, beautiful website that has been produced and is delivered by none other than Shipper Design from San Juan Bautista. So again, another opportunity for us to support a local business to develop one of our most important assets. Video is going to be another great thing we're going to be looking at. We really want to humanize us, tell stories about our customer base, tell the stories of the impact, as well as getting a little more proactive about the information. I know we've got a lot of feedback about Nextdoor. There's a lot of kind of chatter about us and whatnot. So again, our call to action, if folks could get on the county's or the city's Nextdoor account and help bring some validation, we greatly appreciate that. Around account services and business development efforts, we wanted to actually gently introduce the fact that we finally got some rebate information from each one of your member agencies for your own municipal accounts. And collectively, the 19 agencies saved $176,000 on your bill in the calendar year of 2018. So I just wanted to say, and we will be moving forward with hopefully developing a one sheet for you folks every year that kind of recaptures benefits and opportunities moving forward. But again, we need to continue to work with our key customer accounts. We've got a great list of customers that are engaging with us. Also reach out to customers that have opted out. We still have a hot list of about 50 or 60 that we should be knocking on their doors and starting that conversation again, as well as working with key industry sectors and local energy development moving forward. And little do you know, we are talking with San Luis Obispo County and the remaining 5 cities about potentially bringing them into our family as well. Last but certainly not least, energy program efforts. I think the most important thing that I wanted to share with you folks is our effort to engage with key industry sectors. We already started our member agency working group. We're going to meet on a bi-monthly basis and get input from our 19 member agencies about what kind of programs they want to develop. We're going to be starting an agricultural executive committee about ag, as well as we're going to be working with the transit agencies to figure out opportunities to provide input on our transportation electrification. And I also like to say we actually have a meeting next week with Chispa, Mid-Penn Affordable Housing, and Eden to talk about electrifying new affordable housing complexes. So it's a really big win on that front. Also want to give a shout out about our community workshop on the 30th. And on that note, I will take any questions or thoughts or feedback.
Well, I am thoroughly impressed with what we're doing and how the outreach efforts that we've had and to reach every community in our Quad County organization now. So I just want to say thank you for your efforts, and it's J.R. Killigrew, it's not Richardson, who I knew in my legislative days, but thank you very much for spearheading this and the whole team that you had mentioned. I think a lot of people don't know how far we've reached out, but they'll get the message, and let's just keep at it. And it's good for each and every one of us. I think it'd be if we just made an announcement before our respective city councils or something just to get a couple of these bullet points. Maybe if we could even get that review of we have it online, I know, but so we could get something like that. I think it'd be really a positive thing for us just to make a brief presentation about what we're doing, because people. This is new, and I have people. I just made a presentation before Santa Cruz Rotary, and they said, "Am I in?" I said, "Yeah, it's an opt-out." One thing I didn't mention in my presentation was this is an opt-out measure. So people thought, well, thank you very much for having me in without me having to do anything. I mean, they're very appreciative of that. But the ongoing effort we've had to reach out further is really to be applauded. Thank you very much, Mr. Dillis.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for doing all this. I'm very impressed myself as a newcomer to the board. I'm wondering if you could talk just a little bit more about the community survey, what steps you take, and then what you're going to do with the results, how you're going to share that.
Yeah, great question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move everything along. But we're actually going to be chatting with some other agencies that have done similar kind of customer-wide surveys, and I think it's going to hopefully what we can capture is kind of an understanding about the priorities of the region as well as focusing on program opportunities. The big thing that what we're trying to do is inform our fiscal year 1920 programs like roadmap is to take all this work with our upcoming workshop, all of our kind of working groups with different key industries, as well as a customer survey to kind of bring all that together to help present hopefully what is a foundationally sound suite of programs that the whole community can get involved and support.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you for the presentation and all of the work that you're doing. I have so we on Nextdoor in Santa Cruz County, I haven't seen much of this chatter. It's one of the things that misinformation is not being spread about, at least in what I've seen. So is that primarily in Monterey and other counties? Is that elsewhere?
It's
because I'm happy
pretty
to
systematic.
It is.
Even I'm on Nextdoor in my area and with Pacific Grove I think it's Pacific Grove Carmel Pebble Beach area, and it's there too. Unfortunately, our staff has jumped on and tries to mitigate that. And actually, we were notified that I think it was in Aptos last night. A pretty tough string went going, and we totally respect that folks want to have an online dialogue, but it's just when it goes off the rails and it just becomes it's tough because then we have to figure out a way to invest our time and energy on providing value to our customers, but it's also if we're chasing all the social media runs. But we did hear from some other CCAs that if either the county or the city who has kind of a universal account for that particular region can come on and provide some messaging, that becomes the most valuable asset we could leverage to at least get that validation that we're partners on this and this is really driving value.
Great. And one other quick question. Thank you. I'll watch for that. Other quick question. In terms of re-enrollment efforts, how do you go about communicating with those customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of it is going back to our notes and figuring out, okay, why did the customer opt out? Did they opt out within that 60-day window? And if they did, then it's more about going back to the drawing board, taking a look at their load profile, taking a look at how much energy they consumed, and then tabulating what they would have saved with us, and then presenting that information and starting that conversation. Gratefully enough, we're going to be presenting to the Monterey County Hospitality Association on April 4th. There's some key players that were a little tentative about us, so hopefully getting in front of them will start reigniting that conversation. So it's a mixture of not only leveraging the chambers, the sponsored entities, and really kind of just shaking hands with folks, walking them through the paces, as well as delivering the numbers that are going to back up, hopefully to bring them back online to our service.
Mr. Hernandez for Watsonville.
You mentioned some projects with nonprofit housing providers.
can you go into a little more detail about what those discussions are going to be about? Reason is we have Eden and Midpin right now that we're talking to about
Yeah.
large affordable housing projects.
Yeah. So this is an effort, again, and we're open to talk with any affordable housing developer in the region that's working here to drive access to affordable housing. So it just so happened to be, because of our sponsorship with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, their executive director got me in touch with Alfred Diaz, the president or the CEO of Chispa. I had a great conversation with him. He's like, well, why don't I bring Midpen and Eden in, and we can have a great conversation about how MBCP could develop a program to help electrify new housing development. So the hope is we're going to take some feedback there, work with other affordable housing developers, and then the hope would be, based on the recommendation from the Community Advisory Council and the policy board, that we could potentially have a program like that. So again, it's more about going in and, instead of them trenching in the gas lines, us providing program dollars to electrify those housing units.
And are we bringing in AMBAG in that discussion as well? Okay. We'd love to be the pilot project in Watson.
Any other questions from board members? Mr. Freeman?
I was just going to say, winter PG&E bills are out. Well, I just got mine like the day before yesterday, and they're rather high, so that causes concern and things like that. I was going to say that a group of people in Aromas put together a great presentation on how to read your bill, because even for me, it's confusing. The PCIA is in one place, and then they take it out in another, then it's on another page. You need a spreadsheet and a degree in accounting to figure it out. And so, probably. Maybe you could follow up with Seth and such. He can give you a great PowerPoint spreadsheet PowerPoint presentation that he has on how to tear apart your bill and figure it all out.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions from board members? Any questions from the audience? Thank you very much, Mr. Killigrew. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Now we'll go to item number 18, approve the fiscal year 2018-19 mid-year operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's March. Our fiscal year starts on October 1st and September last. And so we are due for a mid-year adjustment, and Tiffany is going to take that on.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to share with all of you our proposed mid-year budget for the fiscal year 18-19. Since our 18-19 budget was approved by the policy board in September last year, we have revised and updated some of the initial assumptions. The first one is the actual assumption from October to December 18 was 9% less than the initially forecasted, leading to lower electricity revenue and power supply expenses. And the second point is the anticipated implementation of actual generation and PCIA rate adjustment has been delayed from January 2019 to May 2019 at the earliest. And then for our mid-year budget assumption approach, we are using the 3+9 forecast approach, which means from October to December 2018, we use the actual data. And then from January to September 2019, we use the reforecast data to reflect the updated business needs. And then for our revenue assumption, we updated the number of service accounts, accounted for the move-ins, the move-outs, and the rate changes, and then also the 2.6% opt-outs. And from January to April 2019, we used the existing PG&E generation and PCIA rates. And from May to September 2019, we use a very conservative approach, which means we use the increase of 20% in PCIA and 13% decrease in PG&E rates. And also for the total load, we lowered it by 6.5%. Here's our key highlights. For revenue, we projected at $221 million, which means $6.8 million lower compared to our original budget. The main drivers were $8 million decrease in electricity revenue because of lower volume consumed from October to December 2018, and then also the lower average customer meter counts. and it offset by $1 million of interest income. This is one of the key notes that I want to share with all of you, that since mid-September 2018, we are actively investing our excess cash into the high interest money market and investment accounts. And our average balance for investment as of February 28th was $57.6 million. And our average monthly interest income is about $90,000. And for the energy cost, we projected at $166 million, which is about $8.9 million lower than the original budget. Because of lower volume consumed from October to December 2018, savings achieved through our hedging strategy, better market prices and improved load forecast, and also the timing difference between the projected and actual renewable energy certificates deliveries. And for our other operating expenses, we projected at $10.5 million, which is about $0.7 million lower than the original budget. The main driver is our lower staffing cost, from 1.9% of revenue to 1.7% of revenue due to the timing of new hires. And this slide illustrates the significant impact of PCIA over our revenue for 1819. On the left-hand side, you can see that it was our original budget. We projected 15% increase in PCIA and 7.5% decrease in PG&E rates beginning January 2019. And on the right-hand side is our new projection for the mid-year budget. We project 20% increase in PCIA and 13% decrease in PG&E rates beginning May 2019. And our gross revenue was projected at $221.3 million, which is about 3% lower than the original budget. And then the PCIA is about $93.5 million, which is 7.6% lower than the original budget. And our PCIA as a percentage of total is about 29.7%, which is 1.3 percentage point lower than the original budget. And this chart illustrates our projected program, rebate, and reserve for 1819. You can see that on the right-hand side is our mid-year figures. For programs, the calculation is 2% of our revenue, so it's slightly decreased by $156,000 to $4.4 million due to the reduced revenue. And then the second one is the rebate. The calculation is 20% of our surplus revenue, so we'll increase by $595,000 to $8.1 million, or 3.7% of our revenue. And the top one is our reserve. The calculation is 80% of our surplus revenue and will increase by $2.4 million to $32.4 million. And then our surplus revenue before rebate, program, and reserve is estimated at $45 million. And this graph demonstrates our reserves revenue. Reserves analysis. The top line you can see shows our maximum reserve balance, which is 75% of our total operating budget expenditure. And then the middle line is the shows our reserve target at 50% of the total operating budget expenditure. And then the line at the bottom shows our minimum reserve balance, which equal to 30% of our total operating budget expenditure. And then all the blue bars shows the cumulative reserve for 17-18, the original budget, and then the mid-year budget. And then this analysis concludes that we had a very good start for 17-18. Our reserve balance was about $40.5 million, which equivalent to 53% of our total operating budget expenditure. And then on the right-hand side, for 18-19 mid-year, we achieved about 41% of our total operating budget expenditure for our reserve balance, which was projected at $72.9 million, which exceeded our minimum reserve balance. So these are all the highlights of our proposed mid-year budget. And then as shared by Tom, that we will provide a final update to the board after we have received the actual PG&E generation and PCIA rates. And right now we anticipate the timing is in June or July timeframe. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that impressive report. Thank you very much. Any questions from board members? Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm intrigued by your slide that shows the revenues by month, so the green and red, yeah. What caught my eye was that apparently, I mean, if money corresponds to energy usage, that energy usage is down in the winter and up in the summer. And that, you know, in our area, I just find that unusual. So the only thing I can think is that some commercial customers are not using much power in the winter, perhaps. So I'm just curious if you could tell me what's the reality behind those numbers?
It's less the energy usage and more the rates that are applied to that usage. So summer rates and winter rates for PG&E are different. Summer rates are higher.
Thank you.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes, thank you. I had a question about the 3% reduction in demand. This is to both of you. What do you attribute that to? Move out of people, less commercial or industrial demand? I'm just wondering what the reason for that 3% drop in electrical usage is.
Actually, it's more than 3%. The estimated usage from the forecast from the time we put the budget together to now, we are seeing about 9% reduction in forecast. And really, the reason is the forecast that we started with was based on the forecast that was put together by the consultants that put the technical study together in order to get this agency moving in the right direction. But now that we had 1 year of operation behind us, we are able to forecast much better because we use real-time data in order to be able to forecast. And we now believe that the forecast that we have now is considerably more accurate than what we've put together sometime around 2 or 3 years ago.
Do you have a question? Anybody else have a question? Mr. Hoffa?
So first of all, I just want to congratulate our staff and our board and the operational board for really making some good decisions and doing great work. This is really positive. Like I would note that despite the PCI going up and really impacting us, yet the net effect on it is our reserve, after it's all said and done, our reserves are still going up 2.4 million, if I understand you correctly. And our rebates, we're still giving even larger rebates to our customers, and our program is only dropping 200,000, and it's still a very healthy 4.2 million. So I just really want to congratulate everyone who's been responsible for that. I think that's outstanding news. Do have a couple quick questions. So the assumptions, as you said, are very conservative. We're assuming a 13% in a decrease in PG&E rates. But if I heard Mr. Habashi correctly, you think that in reality they could be raising their rates 1.1 to 2%. Could you just speak to that? Did I hear both of those correctly? And does that mean that when it's all said and done, this conservative estimate could really be quite conservative and we may be doing better next year than we think?
Yeah, I think it is a conservative estimate, but the PG&E basically said that based on earlier calculations that they have done, and again, we're not privy to their numbers. They never share with us. They basically said, well, we can now go ahead and make an adjustment in power supply costs by about 2% up, with the understanding that the full calculation of what that number should be like is still in the works, with anticipated reduction in generation costs to come in later. The way they operate is really interesting. Every January they change all the rates, so they submit new rates to the CPUC, and it doesn't get finalized until December 31st to be applicable January 1st of the following year. And we don't know about it until probably a few weeks ahead of that time, but it doesn't get finalized until December. Then along the year, they can tweak especially the generation rates, several times during that year to reflect the actual cost of generating facilities, especially natural gas fired ones, because natural gas prices change constantly up or down, and they are ordered to continuously tweak the rates in order to make adjustments that reflects the changes in natural gas prices. So I think the changes that they just made that effective March 1st is just to reflect a bunch of tweaks related to the natural gas prices, but they still have to come back with the full rate design that includes transmission, distribution, public benefit, and so on, which they anticipate that the generation rates will be coming down. Part of it because the PCI is going up. You know, the more money they collect from us, the less money they have to collect from their bundled customers. But I do see that 13% and 20% increase here and reduction there to be a fairly conservative assumption. So the picture may be even better.
Good. Yes, sir. Go.
Another
Sure.
question. If you could go to the slide that showed the reserves over time. Yeah, that one. So really a comment and a question here. The first comment is, it's interesting to see, so in 17-18, we actually achieved our goal of 50% of reserves relative to revenue. But then it's interesting as we've kind of rolled out and expanded, we're sort of in that spot between the minimum and sort of our goal. My comment is, it shows why we need a large reserve, because there is a lot of volatility and there is a lot of unpredictability in our projections that we don't have control over. So for our new friends from the South, you know, our policy is to have a 50% reserve, which is a lot for typical public agencies, but given the responsibilities we have and the unpredictability of future revenues, that's part of the thing, part of our goal. Second thing is, you mentioned that the maximum is 75%. Was that our policy, remind me, or is that state law, or?
It's our policy. And then for the percentage is of the total operating budget expenditures, not revenue.
Excuse me. Anyone else from the board have questions? Thank you for those questions. Any questions from the audience?
Kevin Dayton, Clear Honest Options and Clean Energy. Great question asking about the 9% lower consumption of electricity than had been anticipated. I saw that. I actually tweeted it out. I found it was so interesting because I said, is this to some extent because people are conserving more energy than they used to? Is this actually in some ways a reflection of Monterey Bay Community Power success? It would be interesting to look at the original technical study and see what their assumptions are. Then, of course, another fear I had is maybe this is a little indication that the economy in this area is a lot weaker than people are thinking and something is holding it back, such as high housing prices. I think it'd be worth looking at the original assumptions of that and saying, you know, this isn't 1 or 2%. This is a 9% below what experts were using at the time with a baseline. It'd be interesting to see, is this a success or something to worry about? And will this trend continue, and what does it mean for your finances if it does? I actually would have expected with cannabis businesses and coming in to see that electricity use increasing, but it isn't. So I'm left intrigued by it, and I think it would be worth looking into more. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I can't help but comment as a former California Energy Commissioner. There is another option here. It's called energy efficiency. We implement very tough standards at the state level on new building and appliance standards, and we really do project that we're going to see lower and lower demands. I'm not saying that that's all of it, but I would certainly hope, given the efforts of the state and many of those pieces of legislation that have been passed over the last 20 years, have had some effect.
Good point.
Very briefly, this is Dave Lessakar again. I suspect that one of the biggest consumers of electricity in this area is pumping groundwater for irrigation. And it was a relatively cool fall, and it's been a relatively rainy winter. So I don't know what percent it is, but I've heard
I think
a
it's
couple of
about
anecdotes.
40%, isn't it? 40% or more?
I think all of our ag customers are about 17% of total load, so I would say pumping is a good portion of that, but it would be less than 17%.
Oh, okay. Good. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, let's see, does that that was just a discussion item, so we can move on to item number 18, number 19, amendment to, approve an amendment, number 1, to the employment agreement for the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Hibashi. I might report that Renee Mendez, the chair of the Operations Committee, and I met with Mr. Hibashi. We discussed the situation and how the operations, we are very impressed with how we are, our startup and where we are, and it has been because of him. He would like to have a fixed term of 3 years, and I welcome that because I can tell you that when I go to some CCA functions, I always notice that other agencies, or of the other 18 agencies, many of them come to Mr. Hibashi to ask him a question about how do we make this work better. So I think we have the best of the group in the state of California, frankly, and we're very fortunate to have him. And you have seen and read the proposed agreement, I think. Is there any questions that you have from the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, I would welcome a motion to approve the agreement.
Move the item.
Moved by McShane.
I'll second.
Second by Freeman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Now we will go back to, what was it, item number 7, 19.1. Ms. Harmon, you had a question that you wanted to
Thank
raise?
you. Actually, most of my questions ended up being answered. I wanted to address public comment, which ended up being addressed under another item. And then I think the other questions I had were ultimately kind of embedded into item number 17 in terms of engagement, so.
Okay, very well.
Thank you.
Does it require a motion? Let's see. So I would move that item.
Second.
Right.
Moved
And we'll go
seconded.
out to the public, because I think
oh.
we did, this is the item on which we had public correspondence, so I would
Okay,
imagine there would be
any
public
questions from the audience on this? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded.
And
All those.
Sorry,
excuse me.
could I just ask a question? So I was kind of, one of the issues that was raised by one of the public commenters on this was the relatively high cost of residential rooftop solar. Really trying to make sure, are we prioritizing these things properly? And I guess I would just like to hear staff's comments. I tend to be in favor of residential rooftop solar, so I'd just like to understand how this fits in with the programs, and why we're pursuing this, and sort of to respond to the questions that were raised about it not being maybe the best investment.
I can try to address this one. It may take a couple of minutes. Generally, all the programs that we're looking at do compete. Solar rooftops is a program available for everybody. So if you do want to put solar on your rooftop, there are plenty of people out there that will do it for you, and they will work out all sorts of contracts with you. And if you do that, you become a NEM customer, or net energy metered customer, whereby we pay you for the energy that you generate during the day at very reasonable rates, and then you pay us back at the nighttime when you are consuming electricity. And at the end of the year, if you're a net supplier, we offer customers more than twice as much as PG&E offers theirs. So that's the program. The program to encourage solar rooftops has been in place for quite some time. Probably is not as lucrative today as it used to be, because generally the state is not looking, and here when I say the state, I mean the CPUC, are not looking fondly on it, because there's so much solar that comes during the day. It drives the load that's being met by other resources way down to the point where there's a lot of ramping up and down of combustion turbines that causes problems for the operators and probably causes additional emissions that or greenhouse gas emissions that we could do without. And that's why PG&E and the CPUC and the rest of the investor-owned utilities are not way out supporting solar rooftops these days. And quite frankly, if we have money to spend, I'd much rather spend it on transportation and building electrification. I think that's where we need to focus. Nowadays, we're 100% carbon-free. Putting another solar on somebody's rooftop is not going to get us to 101. We're still going to be at 100% carbon-free. I would much rather go after the greenhouse gas that's now comes from the building sector as well as the transportation sector.
And if I could just ask a follow-up question, and this is just a broader thought that I had. We were talking earlier about the microgrids, and there was some, I think it was public comment about that microgrids are sort of a hedge against our vulnerability of being connected to one large transmission system. Would rooftop solar also contribute in a positive way to a local microgrid system potentially, or?
Perhaps not a solar rooftop. It could be placed in the same area where let's say it's an industrial park, and if the industrial park have a large area, a large footprint, where they can dedicate a couple of acres for us to put solar and some batteries, that would be definitely ideal. We certainly would want to make sure that we have renewable resources as part of any microgrid that we're going to put in place, and also to make sure that if we do put combustion turbines in there, that those combustion turbines will later on become just a standby generating units rather than ongoing indefinitely being a supplier of choice.
So I think what I'm hearing in terms of the residential rooftop solar as part of a microgrid, that sort of by definition, residential rooftop solar is part of the larger transmission network rather than a microgrid in general.
I would say if they are in the middle of the city, if they are connected, then you are correct. It would be the least expensive option for them. If you have a development that is not close to any lines and it's going to be very costly for them to connect both the electric and gas, then I would say microgeneration would be definitely a very viable option, especially if that community would be built without any natural gas connection, because that could be costly. And it's also one of the things that we would like to eliminate from the house and stock that we have in place. So if we can start a new one without any connection to natural gas, that would be good.
Very good. Okay, and I think it's a point. I think the greenhouse gas emission reduction goal for this region for 2030, we have met that this year. I think that's correct?
Yes, because right away, without having to do anything, there's 25% of your greenhouse gas that you responsible to meet. Now it's pretty much wiped out. That's the 25% associated with electric generation.
Very good. Thank you. I've been advised that we should go back to item number 18 of the fiscal year mid-year operating budget. It should be an action item, not a discussion item.
Yes.
I just need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second, been moved and seconded to approve the item number 18. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So ordered unanimously.
And Mr. Chair, I think I interrupted you before we could vote on 19.1. So I think that motion is still pending.
Oh, my
I
gosh.
believe.
I
Sorry, I threw a spanner in the spokes there.
I apologize. I do. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other discussion on 19.1? Anybody from the audience?
Okay, I think you basically have seen, my position and my cited sources for my thoughts about residential rooftop solar, in terms of, adding, creating microgrids for customers who need service in a remote area. We'll provide it as economically as we can, and we'll charge them a reasonable price so that we at least break even. So if they insist on that they want rooftop, a small scale rooftop or small scale solar, then they can pay for it. But I will mention that the analysis that I referred to indicates that on a commercial and an industrial scale rooftop, the prices is about half of residential rooftop, and the prices go down a little further to less than half for community scale solar installations. And generally speaking, wind is the cheapest of all, so it may be cheap, commercial or community scale wind maybe end up being cheaper than solar. So I think you just have to, I think largely what's going to drive this revolution towards carbon-free energy is going to be the falling costs, and it's just going to make, straightforward economic sense to make the transition, and we need to facilitate that as much as possible by, electrifying and replacing natural gas.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, now we will. We have a motion on the floor for 19.1. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered unanimously. We go to the final item, number 20, board member reports and comments. I might just make a short comment that at the end of November, on the executive board of CSAC, County State Association of Counties, California State Association of Counties, I made a presentation on our operation and received after that a roundtable that included a supervisor from San Luis Obispo, who the county had entertained getting into a CCA before, decided not to because of some really concerns about what they thought were increasing costs. We talked about that. He said, I told him that we were going to close out the year and have a rebate. It's going to be carbon-free, and it's going to be a local governing body that will oversee the operation of this agency. He said, I'm interested, and I would like to come. The county board, I think, rejected their first proposal, not from us, but from another possible agency, and it was a 3-2 vote, I believe, and he was one of the 3 that voted against it. Mr. Hibashi and I met with him for 2 hours here, I believe, and I think he's very interested, and that has resulted in Mr. Hibashi and myself going down to San Luis Obispo tomorrow to talk to the Board of Supervisors there. 2 members, there was 2 members that were for it. 2 members that were for it we're going to talk to, and we're going to be talking to also the cities associations. There are, aside from the 2 cities, Morro Bay and the city of San Luis Obispo, that have joined us, the other 5 cities have expressed interest. We are going to be meeting with 2 county supervisors tomorrow afternoon, and then meet with some of the city representatives in the morning, Friday morning. And then we're going to go back down there on Monday, which is not a bad drive, being a Cal Poly Mustang myself. But so we're going to we will have met with all 5 county supervisors and representatives of the city, and I feel very positive about it. But until it's a done deal, we'll see how it goes. But I feel very upbeat that we're going to have the county and cities they are interested in what we're doing, and they may all be with us in the near future, I would hope. Mr. Bashi, did you have any other comments about that at all?
I think you wrapped it all. We're going to be the next 3 days, like working days, Thursday, right. Friday, and Monday. We'll be out there talking to just about everybody in San Luis Obispo County, and certainly hopeful that we'll be able to bring the county in, and if we can somehow figure out a way to bring the northern half of Santa Barbara, then we're pretty much locked all the PG&E territory in Central Coast, and I think that would be a huge achievement for us. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Okay, any other comments? All right, this meeting is, oh, yes, yes, that's all right. Mr. Harmon, no.
Okay. I actually I have a question. I am curious to know if we are thinking about other climate-oriented initiatives, is this a body to bring those to, and is this end period the time to do that, or is it better to contact people individually and just share information that don't have a direct nexus with CCAs, but that are related in that way?
I think it's great to bring it to this body.
Okay.
We are interested in anything that's climate change positive related. And I think probably the best thing would be to direct your comments to the staff.
Okay.
They have a lot to do, but they could say, yeah, this will fit, or this is where we should go, or whoever it is should go to get some more information. That would be the right person.
Okay.
I think just call the staff, Mr.
And
Boshi
then
or somebody.
in that same line of thinking, and maybe this has already been done, and obviously I'm new, so have we already shared with each other all that we're already doing or committed to doing around climate initiatives? No?
No, it's this has just been.
Is that something that's of interest? I mean, I would be curious to learn what you're all up to and be happy to share what we're doing. I think that is a way that we can amplify our time here, our work here together as this body, if that's appropriate
Sure,
and
I know
of
that
interest.
we've been putting solar panels on our rooftops of county buildings and doing one thing or another, and I'm sure many of you have too.
Okay,
Maybe staff could sort of pull that together for something to review.
okay. So if that's of interest, I think we can send, it sounds like, to staff all we've done and are committing to doing, and then maybe we can share.
Perhaps one way for us is to communicate with your sustainability managers or staff responsible for doing that work, ask for the information, and put it all together and bring it to you in the next meeting.
Great.
Yeah, and that next meeting, what's the date?
June 5th?
June 5th, and it will be here at 10:30.
Yes.
That'll be our next meeting. Any other comments from board members? Okay, excuse me, Mr. Hoffa.
Just briefly, I think that's a great suggestion. And like, I hadn't heard about Santa Cruz and the bus pass thing, and be interested in hearing more.
Sure.
What's the
Yeah.
cost? How does it work? What are the goals? And so that's
Yeah, I
something
think
we
that's-
would
Yeah,
consider.
wanted to commend you on that too. We have that same program, and it has so many co-benefits too, of getting not only people out of their cars, but out of parking in the downtown, which is also usually a huge challenge for folks.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's
Yeah.
good. I think we want to know what each other's doing, and some of us are doing some very good things above and beyond what we're doing here. That's for sure. Okay, well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.